You know when you watch those slow motion crash test videos?
Oh, yeah. I know exactly what you mean.
Right. A pristine, beautifully engineered car is just gliding along. It looks completely flawless, and then bam!
Right into the wall.
Exactly. It hits a solid concrete wall, and the laws of physics just completely take over. The illusion of control shatters in, like, a fraction of a second.
Yeah, it's visceral. The bumper crumples, the glass flies everywhere.
It really is. It's this harsh collision between human design and just undeniable reality.
And, that exact kind of collision is what we're looking at today. So welcome to today's deep dive.
Get ahead of here.
If you are joining us, it's because you want to cut through the daily noise and get straight to the heart of what is actually happening in the world.
And today, we have a really fascinating stack of sources to look through. We are diving into excerpts from the August 11, 2026 edition of the Daily Grind News.
Right, which is an independent newsletter written by Bill Davis.
Right. And our mission for this deep dive is to explore a very specific, very powerful common thread running through all these seemingly disconnected stories.
It's all about that collision, right?
Exactly. We are going to look at the collision between the carefully crafted stories that powerful people tell and the hard, undeniable realities they eventually just have to face.
But before we jump into the material, we do need to set the stage on how we are handling this.
Yeah, definitely.
Today's sources contain some highly charged political commentary. The newsletter touches on both left-wing and right-wing figures.
I mean, we're talking about Donald Trump, Lauren Boebert, a lot of big names.
Right. So we want to make it absolutely clear to you, the listener, that we are not endorsing any political viewpoints here today.
I know.
We are not taking any sides, nor are we validating the editor of this newsletter.
Our job is simply to act as your impartial guides. We are just here to convey and analyze the ideas, the reporting, and, the underlying dynamics contained in the original source material.
Nothing more, nothing less.
Exactly. Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start with the ultimate clash of narratives, which is international diplomacy in the Strait of Hormuz.
Oh, man. There is no arena where narrative and reality collide quite as spectacularly as the global stage.
Truly.
We are looking at a situation right now where economic reality is clashing head-on with political pride.
So the newsletter reports that Pakistan's defense minister, Khawaja Asif, along with a Qatari foreign ministry spokesperson, they both signaled that a deal to ease the standoff in the Strait of Hormuz is at a critical juncture.
Right. They were actually citing encouraging signals.
Yeah, hinting that one of the most important oil routes in the entire world might finally see some progress.
But of course, just as those optimistic statements hit the wire, President Trump, speaking directly from the Oval Office, decided to raise the price of admission.
Yeah, he added entirely new demands to the table.
He argued that any future agreement has to include massive reparations from Iran.
Right. He is demanding compensation for decades of attacks and losses.
Which is a huge escalation.
We are talking about payments for wounded or killed American personnel, and even for victims of the Iranian regime's crackdowns on its own protesters.
Yeah.
He literally said, if there's damages to be paid, I think Iran should pay those damages.
And the newsletter editor points out that this perfectly mirrors Iran's own demands from just a few days prior.
Oh, right, where they demanded billions in reparations from the U.S.
Exactly. Iran's counterdemands are incredibly steep. They are insisting the Strait of Hormuz will not fully reopen until the U.S. lifts all sanctions.
Wow.
They want frozen Iranian assets released, forces withdrawn from the region, their own reparations paid, and they fundamentally want the U.S. to end its naval blockade.
Let's actually pause on that term, naval blockade, because I feel like it sounds like something from the 1800s.
It really does sound historical.
But mechanically, a blockade in a geographic choke point like the Strait of Hormuz, that means physically positioning warships to control or restrict maritime traffic.
Right, and you were dealing with a very narrow strip of water there.
Exactly. A massive percentage of the world's oil flows through there. So when warships are aggressively patrolling that space, insurance premiums for commercial oil tankers just skyrocket.
Oh, totally.
And the physical flow of energy is seriously threatened.
Which is exactly why global markets are sitting there watching this ping-pong match of demands with just pure anxiety.
Yeah, the markets are freaking out.
Brent crude oil briefly surged near $90 a barrel just on the rumors of these talks.
Just the rumors.
Right, before retreating a bit when Pakistan's comments hinted at actual diplomatic progress.
Honestly, to me, this feels exactly like two people sitting at a restaurant, loudly demanding that the other person pay the bill for a massive meal they haven't even ordered or eaten yet.
That is a great way to put it.
It's so performative.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to ask, is this actual diplomacy or is this just domestic posturing meant for the respective home audiences?
Well, what's fascinating here is how the newsletter editor frames this exact dynamic.
Okay, how so?
The editor notes that demanding the other side pay first is a remarkably effective way to keep negotiators perpetually employed.
Huh. Job security.
Exactly. By starting with absolutely impossible demands, like reparations for decades of history, both sides are establishing an extreme anchor point.
Right, anchoring. That psychological mechanism where the first number thrown out sets the terms for the entire negotiation.
Precisely. But the problem is the venue. When leaders posture for a domestic audience to project strength over a geographical choke point, one that controls the world's energy supply.
The stakes just transcend politics at that point.
Exactly. The market reaction, that surge to $90 a barrel, that is reality knocking on the door.
Yeah.
It is the global economy saying, your political theater has a very real mathematical cost.
And you just can't spend the price of crude oil. The ticker tape is what it is.
No, you really can't.
But that friction, between political theater and hard numbers, it doesn't stop at the water's edge. Because the exact same struggle to curate reality is happening domestically right now in Washington. Let's look at the Office of Homeland Security statistics.
Yeah, this is a textbook example of trying to control reality by simply hiding the math.
So according to the newsletter, Mark Rosenblum, the head of that office, resigned in late July.
And he had been there a long time, right?
Yeah, he spent more than a decade overseeing independent immigration statistics. And he resigned because the Trump administration blocked his office from publishing key deportation data.
And the structural mechanism of this office is really important for you, the listener, to understand.
Yeah, break that down.
This was an office created with bipartisan support specifically to provide Congress and the public with reliable data that is totally free from political interference.
It is supposed to be the objective scoreboard.
Exactly. But the data tables completely froze in 2024. Monthly enforcement reports just stopped coming out.
Meanwhile, the administration is out there claiming they're conducting aggressive enforcement. They are saying millions of immigrants have self-deported. And incredibly, they are calling themselves the most transparent administration in history, which the editor actually added a LOL to in the text.
I mean, the fallout of a data vacuum like that is severe. Without that routine reporting, outsiders are left comparing curated press releases and unofficial leaks instead of standardized government data.
The numbers basically just cease to exist as an objective reality.
And the frustration isn't just coming from opponents. The newsletter quotes Andrew Arthur, who is a pro-Trump former immigration judge.
Right. He told The Atlantic, I don't care what the data says, just give it to me.
He just wants the numbers to verify the claims.
Exactly. But, while you can sometimes hide a spreadsheet, you cannot always hide a live broadcast.
Oh, this is a perfect transition.
Right. The source material highlights an Oval Office event that perfectly illustrates this.
So this was a 40-minute event to sign an executive order on childhood vaccines.
And you had some very high-profile speakers there.
Yeah, Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., NIH Director Jay Bhattacharya, Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller.
But while they were delivering these major policy statements, the cameras captured President Trump repeatedly closing his eyes and slumping in his chair for these extended stretches.
The White House, of course, dismissed the footage entirely. They stated he was just blinking or maybe a bit bored by the proceedings.
But the Daily Beast noted that this is actually a recurring visual issue in recent months.
Yeah, and the newsletter editor suggested that after years of deploying the moniker Sleepy Joe, it might be time to retire it for Dozing Donnie.
Okay, so what does this all mean? Because I really have to push back a little on grouping these two stories together under the same umbrella.
Okay, lay it on me.
On one hand, you have a systemic, deliberate blackout of national security data at the DHS.
Right.
On the other hand, you have a guy who might just be getting tired during a 40-minute meeting. I mean, isn't there a massive difference in scale between a massive data vacuum and just taking a nap?
Well, if we connect this to the bigger picture, the underlying mechanism is actually exactly the same.
Really?
It's the catastrophic breakdown of controlled optics. Look, when a government tries to control a narrative by stopping the publication of the scoreboard, the lack of numbers inherently becomes the story.
Ah, I see.
The silence is deafening, and it actually undermines the very policy success they are trying to project. You create a void, and conspiracy and doubt rush in to fill it.
That makes sense.
Similarly, the White House apparatus works incredibly hard to project an image of boundless presidential energy. Every camera angle, every speaking slot is highly curated.
So when he slumps over.
Exactly. When a president cannot physically maintain that projection on a live feed, the unscripted footage completely overrides the scripted policy. Nobody remembers the substance of the vaccine executive order.
They only remember the visual of the slump.
Exactly. In both cases, objective reality is breaking through a carefully constructed political facade. You cannot PR your way out of a blank spreadsheet, and you certainly cannot PR your way out of raw video.
That is a really great point. And, that same arrogance that makes leaders think they can out-PR a video feed is exactly what gets society into trouble when we think we can out-engineer Mother Nature.
Oh, absolutely.
Because while politicians can try to spin a data set, they absolutely cannot spin the laws of physics.
No, they cannot.
Nor, it seems, can they escape the rules of accountability they demand from others. Let's look at the Colorado River crisis.
This one is just staggering in its scale. We are talking about the Hoover Dam, which is one of the most iconic pieces of engineering on the planet.
It's massive.
And the newsletter reports that it is expected to produce about 40% less than its maximum hydropower capacity this year.
The reservoirs are just shrinking so fast. The entire Colorado River system is approaching water levels these dams were simply never designed to handle.
Right, upstream. Lake Powell is getting dangerously close to what they call the minimum power pool.
Minimum power pool.
Yeah.
That concept is crucial to understand. It isn't just about the water running dry. It is a hard physical limit.
Explain that a bit more.
Well, hydroelectric dams don't just need water to flow. They need immense water weight, which engineers call head pressure, pushing down from above to forcefully spin the massive turbines inside the dam.
So without the weight.
Right. When the water level drops below a certain elevation, there simply isn't enough gravity and weight to push the water through the intake tubes with enough force. The engineering becomes completely useless.
Which is terrifying. John Berggren of Western Resource Advocates is actually quoted in the source saying, "It's been the slowest moving train wreck in history, yet we're letting it play out in front of us."
These dams were built to supply water and generate power for roughly 40 million people across the Southwest.
40 million.
Yeah. But now, due to decades of drought, extreme heat, declining snowpack, experts say the whole focus has to shift.
Right, they can't even worry about maximizing hydropower anymore.
No, they're desperately just trying to preserve enough water to keep the physical infrastructure from becoming entirely obsolete.
The editor notes that cities are investing in water recycling and farmers are trying new irrigation techniques. But, none of that actually manufactures new water.
Exactly. It's like holding a multi-billion-dollar state-of-the-art smartphone, but the battery is permanently dead.
Yeah, a very expensive paperweight.
The brilliant engineering of the microchips and the screen, it doesn't matter a bit without the juice, or in this case, the water pressure. You just cannot negotiate with a dry riverbed.
You really can't. And that inability to negotiate with hard reality transitions us directly into the unyielding nature of public scrutiny, specifically focusing on Representative Lauren Boebert.
Right. So the newsletter details that Representative Boebert's 21-year-old son, Tyler, was arrested in Colorado on felony charges.
Serious charges.
Very serious. The allegations involved the sexual exploitation of a child, specifically recording and distributing a sexually explicit video of a 17-year-old girl, and potentially being connected to an anonymous Instagram account featuring explicit images of minors.
We should mention, the source makes sure to note that he is currently released on bond, and these are allegations that have not been proven in court.
Right.
He is completely entitled to the presumption of innocence legally.
Legally, yes. But politically, the newsletter points out this is a massive reckoning.
Oh, definitely.
Because Representative Boebert built a massive part of her national brand aggressively attacking Hunter Biden.
Yeah, back in 2023, she mocked him in House hearings, called him a criminal, and relentlessly argued that the misconduct of a politician's family reflects directly on the politician.
But she basically said it shouldn't be ignored by the press or the public.
But now that her own family is in the crosshairs, she has issued a very standard, very quiet PR statement regarding her son.
Yeah, she basically said, I love my son. We take these allegations very seriously and pray for everyone affected.
Which is exactly what any parent in a crisis would say, of course.
Sure. But as the editor points out, a quiet PR statement doesn't erase years of insisting that family scandals are fair game for brutal public debate.
No, it doesn't.
I do have to ask you, though, how do Mother Nature's water shortage at the Hoover Dam and a congressional family scandal actually represent the exact same phenomenon for the listener?
Yeah.
I mean, mechanically, they seem worlds apart.
Well, this raises an important question about the relationship between foresight and hubris.
Okay, I'm listening.
In both scenarios, you have entities operating under a fatally flawed assumption of invulnerability.
Right.
With the Colorado River, the architects of the modern Southwest built permanent, water-dependent infrastructure under the hubristic assumption that the river would always flow at historic volumes. They completely ignored the long-term environmental reality of a changing climate.
Yeah, they thought they could out-engineer nature forever.
And with Representative Boebert, she built a political brand on throwing heavy stones at opponents' families under the hubristic assumption that her own glass house would never shatter.
Wow, yeah.
In both cases, reality eventually collects its debts. Whether it's a reservoir losing its head pressure or a political double standard being exposed by an arrest record, you cannot build a sustainable future on a foundation of denial.
Reality always collects its debts.
Like that.
I like that.
Ah.
We have watched Mother Nature call in a debt on a massive dam, and we've seen public opinion call in a debt on a politician's rhetoric.
And we aren't done yet.
Nope. Now, we are going to look at what happens when the financial market calls in a debt on corporate hubris. We're talking about Matt Ishbia, the CEO of United Wholesale Mortgage.
Oh man, this is the ultimate billionaire reality check.
It really is.
Matt Ishbia built the nation's biggest mortgage lender. He literally bought an NBA team with cash. He operated as the undisputed king of mortgages for years.
Telling investors that his highly aggressive strategy was brilliant and would pay off massive dividends when interest rates eventually fell.
But the macroeconomic forces did not cooperate. According to the Wall Street Journal reporting featured in the newsletter, a $1.3 billion acquisition failed. Yeah, and a massive interest rate hedge completely blew up in his face. It resulted in a staggering $603 million loss for UWM. They had to suspend their dividend just to survive.
Let's actually break down the mechanics of an interest rate hedge, because it's a term thrown around in finance all the time, but it can be confusing.
Yeah, simply put, a hedge is supposed to be an insurance policy.
Okay.
If you are a massive mortgage lender, your entire business model is vulnerable to fluctuations in interest rates. So you place financial bets in the broader market that are designed to pay off if interest rates move against your core business.
Basically, you are paying for protection.
Right. But if you structure that bet poorly, or if the market moves in a way you fundamentally miscalculated, that insurance policy transforms into a toxic liability.
Oh.
Instead of protecting you, the hedge itself drains hundreds of millions of dollars from your balance sheet.
Which left Ishbia just bleeding cash.
Mm.
So to stay afloat, he had to take a $1.5 billion lifeline from Oaktree Capital Management.
Right, a massive investment giant specifically known for circling distressed debt.
Yeah, and the terms of this rescue deal are absolutely punishing.
Oaktree didn't just give him a friendly loan. They extracted preferred stock, paying a 10% annual dividend.
10%, wow.
They took 2 board seats, they secured the power to block major corporate decisions, and the right to eventually force a buyout of the company.
So they have total control.
Pretty much. If UWM stumbles again, Oaktree has the structural leverage to simply seize control of the board entirely, and the market reacted violently to this loss of control.
Yeah, UWM shares plunged 35% on the news. A company that was valued at $16 billion after going public in 2021 is now worth about $2 billion today.
And Ishbia is out there claiming Oaktree will make, quote, a boatload of money alongside shareholders, just desperately trying to spin this as a strategic win.
Here's where it gets really interesting to me. The mechanics of preferred stock and board seats completely change the power dynamic. This rescue deal is like taking out a payday loan to cover a terrible bet in Vegas. But instead of the loan shark just charging you exorbitant interest, they demand the physical deed to your house.
Right.
They move into your master bedroom. They get veto power over your grocery list, and they tell you what you're allowed to watch on TV. Your total authority is just gone.
It is a devastating loss of leverage. The underlying mechanism here is the danger of making highly leveraged financial bets based on the arrogant assumption that macroeconomic forces will magically bend to your will.
Yeah.
When you operate with near total authority, as Ishbia did for years, the corporate feedback loop gets broken. You surround yourself with people who validate your brilliance, and you start believing your own narrative of invincibility.
But the bond market does not care about your confidence.
Not at all. As the newsletter editor perfectly summarized, confidence is a great business strategy right up until it collides with reality. Then you are suddenly negotiating from a position of profound weakness.
It is incredibly humbling, even for a billionaire who thought he had outsmarted the system.
Truly.
So bring this all together for you listening right now. Look at the journey we've taken through today's deep dive. We started with international posturing and the anchoring of impossible demands in the Strait of Hormuz.
Right.
We moved to the engineered data vacuums and unscripted camera moments breaking the facade in Washington. We traveled to the dying head pressure of cracked reservoirs in the American Southwest and ended up in a humbled billionaire's boardroom after a blown hedge fund bet.
In every single instance, the structural through line is identical. People in power attempt to construct a controlled narrative.
Yeah.
They demand impossible reparations to look tough. They hide the deportation statistics to project success. They ignore the drought to keep building. They attack their rivals while ignoring their own glass houses. And they bet against the interest rates, assuming they are smarter than the market.
But reality always bats last.
Always.
The crude oil price spikes on the ticker. The unscripted video goes viral. The water pressure physically stops flowing. The arrest is made public, and the stock valuation plummets.
I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over, building on all of these sources.
Go for it.
We have spent this entire discussion looking at what happens when leverage violently shifts against presidents, against politicians, and against billionaires when reality finally catches up to them. But what happens when ordinary citizens realize that they hold the leverage?
Oh, wow.
As water becomes visibly scarce in our communities, as government data becomes deliberately hidden from public view, what happens when the public decides to simply stop accepting the curated top-down narratives? What happens when you decide to start demanding the raw data of your own life?
That's a great point.
Because if the billionaires and politicians can't hide from reality, eventually they won't be able to hide it from the rest of us either.
That is a fascinating question to end on, because sooner or later, that flawless, gleaming car of political spin is going to hit the concrete wall of reality, and we're all going to see exactly what it's made of. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. Take care.
Goodbye, everyone.